Look at your teeth right now. Not in a mirror. Just run your tongue across them. All of them. Top and bottom, front and back. Count them if you want. 32 teeth, maybe fewer if you've had your wisdom teeth pulled. But they're there. Solid. Reliable. You've probably never once thought about what your life would look like without them. Your ancestors thought about it every single day. Before dentists, before painkillers, before anyone understood what a cavity actually was, losing your teeth wasn't a question of if. It was a question of when. And for most of human history, it started early. Archaeologists have pulled skulls from burial sites across Europe, Africa, and Asia, and found the same story written in bone over and over again. Severe tooth decay by the teenage years. Major tooth loss by the 30s. By 40, if you even made it to 40, your mouth was often a wreck of broken stumps and empty sockets. Infection was constant. The pain was something modern humans have almost no reference point for. No ibuprofen, no antibiotics, no numbing injections, just the pain living inside your jaw every hour of every day until it stopped or until you died. And here is what nobody tells you. This wasn't rare. This wasn't something that happened to the unlucky ones. This was the baseline. This was normal human life for hundreds of thousands of years. The question isn't, why did ancient humans lose their teeth? The question is, how did they survive it? How did they keep eating, keep hunting, keep raising children, keep functioning as human beings when the machinery inside their mouths was falling apart? Scientists started asking that question seriously only in the last few decades. And what they found buried in caves, preserved in ancient remains, locked inside the chemistry of fossilized dental plaque, changes everything you think you know about human resilience, human intelligence, and the lengths our ancestors went to just to stay alive. Because they didn't just suffer in silence. They adapted. They invented. They found solutions that should have been impossible for people with no formal knowledge of medicine, no written language, no scientific framework whatsoever. And some of those solutions are so sophisticated that researchers are still trying to fully understand them today. This is not a story about weakness. This is a story about what happens when the human brain is pushed to its absolute limit by something as simple and as devastating as a rotting tooth. Your ancestors faced it. Every single generation before you faced it. And the way they responded shaped not just their survival, but yours. By the end of this, you will never look at your teeth the same way again. And you will understand something about the people who built every civilization on this planet that history books almost never mention. They were doing all of it in pain, and they kept going anyway. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. To understand what ancient humans did when they lost their teeth, you first have to understand what losing your teeth actually meant in a world with no safety net. Not the inconvenience version, the real version. Start with food. Everything your ancestors ate required teeth, not soft processed food that dissolves on your tongue. Real food, dried meat that had been sitting for weeks. Roots pulled from hard ground that needed to be gnawed through before they gave you anything useful. Nuts cracked with back molars. Tough wild grains that modern wheat doesn't come close to in terms of raw hardness. Sinew, bone cartilage, the kind of food that would shatter a cheap fork. When you lost your back teeth, the ones doing the actual grinding work, you lost access to most of your caloric intake overnight. Not gradually. Overnight. One bad infection, one tooth that finally gave out after months of decay, and suddenly half the foods keeping you alive became physically impossible to eat. And the infection itself was its own death sentence. Your mouth is one of the most bacteria-rich environments in your entire body. A modern cavity, left completely untreated, will eventually abscess. The abscess fills with bacteria. Those bacteria don't stay in your jaw. They move into your bloodstream, into your heart, into your brain. Researchers studying ancient remains have found skulls where the infection from a single tooth had eaten through the jawbone itself. A hollow tunnel of rot carved through solid bone over months or years of untreated decay. They've found evidence of sepsis. They found evidence of brain abscesses traced directly back to a bad molar. A toothache in 50,000 BC wasn't an annoyance you made a dentist appointment for. It was a slow-moving threat to your life. Now add this on top of everything else already trying to kill you. You're already managing hunger. You're already managing cold. You're already managing the physical demands of a life that required your body to perform at levels most modern humans couldn't sustain for a single week. And now you have a throbbing infection in your jaw that hasn't stopped for 3 months, and you still have to get up in the morning, go out, and find food for yourself and everyone depending on you. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology analyzed the dental remains of Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. and found something that stopped them cold. The rate of severe dental disease in prehistoric populations wasn't just high. In some populations, it was nearly universal. Almost every adult skeleton they examined showed significant tooth loss, advanced decay, or both. This wasn't a health crisis. It was the permanent condition of being human before the modern era, which means every great thing your ancestors ever built, every tool, every migration, every piece of art scratched into a cave wall, every child raised to adulthood in an unforgiving world, was accomplished by people who were very likely doing it with chronic pain living inside their skulls. That changes the story entirely, and what they did about it changes it even further. This is where the story turns. Because when archaeologists started looking closely, really closely, at ancient remains, they didn't find evidence of people simply enduring. They found evidence of people solving, actively, intelligently, sometimes brilliantly solving a problem that should have been unsolvable with the tools they had. The oldest evidence of deliberate dental work ever found comes from a site in Slovenia. A Neanderthal jawbone dated to around 130,000 years ago. The tooth in question had been severely damaged, the enamel cracked down to the pulp, and researchers found something unexpected when they examined it under magnification: tiny parallel scratch marks on the surface of the damaged tooth. Deliberate scratch marks, made with a small pointed tool, repeatedly, in the same direction. The leading interpretation is that this Neanderthal was using a tool to scrape the damaged area, possibly to relieve pressure, possibly to clean out decay, possibly both. This was not accidental damage. This was an attempt at treatment. 130,000 years ago, before Homo sapiens had even fully emerged as a species, something was sitting somewhere in what is now Europe, holding a small sharp instrument and trying to fix its own tooth. That's not primitive. That's a dentist. But the most astonishing find came from a cave in Pakistan called Merga. Researchers excavating a Neolithic burial site discovered something that rewrote the history of medicine entirely. 11 teeth from 9 different individuals, dated to between 7,500 and 9,000 years ago, had been deliberately drilled. Not broken, not scratched. Drilled. Clean circular holes bored into the molars with a precision that suggested a tool designed specifically for the purpose. Analysis of the drill marks showed they had been made with small flint-tipped bow drills, the same basic technology used to start fires, repurposed and refined into something that functioned as a dental instrument. Some of the holes showed signs of decay that had been partially removed. Some showed wear patterns, suggesting the patient had continued chewing with the treated tooth for years afterward. 9,000 years ago, in a cave in Pakistan, people were performing functional dental procedures that actually worked well enough for the patient to keep using the tooth. The operation had a recovery. There was a result worth surviving for. And then there was the pain management. Because none of this was happening with anesthesia. Or was it? Researchers analyzing ancient botanical remains found at various prehistoric sites across Europe and the Middle East have identified traces of specific plants clustered around areas associated with medical activity. Henbane, opium poppy, plants with genuine analgesic and sedative properties that we now know were being deliberately cultivated and used by humans thousands of years before any written record of medicine exists. Chemical analysis of dental calculus, the hardened plaque preserved on ancient teeth, has found traces of compounds consistent with medicinal plant use in individuals who showed signs of severe dental disease. They weren't just drilling teeth in agony. They were managing it. Imperfectly, dangerously by modern standards, but deliberately, with accumulated knowledge passed from person to person across generations, refined over centuries of painful trial and error, building towards something that functioned like a medical tradition long before anyone wrote the word medicine down. One site in northern Italy, dating to around 13,000 years ago, produced a tooth with a cavity that had been manually excavated with a small stone tool and then filled. The filling material was a mixture of bitumen plant fibers and hair. It held. The tooth showed no further decay around the filled area. Someone 13 millennia ago understood that you had to remove the rot, seal the cavity, and protect what remained. The logic is identical to what happens in a dental chair today. The instruments were different. The understanding of why it worked was different. But the solution was the same, because the human brain, pushed hard enough, finds the answer. Every time, across every era, across every level of technology. It looks at the problem, it tries things, it remembers what worked, and it passes that knowledge forward. Your ancestors had no textbooks. They had pain, intelligence, and each other. And somehow, that was enough. Now bring it back to your mouth. That filling in your tooth, the one your dentist placed in 20 minutes while you sat in a cushioned chair under bright lights with your jaw completely numb, is the direct descendant of a paste made from bitumen and plant fiber pressed into a cavity by someone sitting in a cave in northern Italy 13,000 years ago. The logic traveled forward through every generation between that person and you. Refined, improved, transformed beyond recognition, but the same logic. Find the rot, remove it, seal what remains, protect the tooth. You inherited that, not just the dentistry, the drive behind it, the refusal to simply accept pain as a permanent condition and stop there. The instinct to look at a problem that seems impossible and start trying things anyway. That instinct is not modern. It is not a product of science or civilization or the Enlightenment. It is ancient. It was running in a Neanderthal, holding a small sharp tool to its own cracked tooth 130,000 years before you were born. And here is the part that should genuinely stop you for a moment. Every human being who accomplished anything in the ancient world, every person who figured out how to plant crops, domesticate animals, build structures that lasted thousands of years, cross oceans in wooden boats with no instruments, create art sophisticated enough that we still put it in museums today, was doing all of it while managing a level of chronic physical pain that most modern humans will never experience in their entire lives. Bad teeth weren't a side story to ancient history, they were the permanent background condition of it, the drumbeat underneath everything, and they kept going. Researchers who study ancient remains often talk about the skeletal evidence of healed injuries, broken bones that knitted back together, infections that resolved, wounds that closed, evidence of people who should have died and didn't. What those remains tell you, if you're willing to read them honestly, is that your ancestors were not fragile. They were not waiting to be rescued by modern medicine. They were surviving inside conditions that would hospitalize most people alive today, and they were doing it through accumulated knowledge, collective care, and a stubbornness encoded so deep in human biology that no amount of comfort has managed to breed it out. That stubbornness is in you right now. When you wake up at 3 in the morning with a toothache, and your first instinct is to fix it, to find something, to do something, to not just lie there and accept it. That is not a modern response. That is the oldest human response there is. The same one that produced the drill marks in Mergar. The same one that produced the filling in Italy. The same one that produced every incremental step between a flint-tipped bow drill and the dental chair you sat in last year. Your body remembers being fragile. It remembers what it cost to keep a single mouth functional in a world that offered no help and no mercy. And it built systems, physical and cultural and intellectual, specifically to fight back against that fragility and pass the solutions forward. You are the solution that got passed forward. Every person in your lineage going back 3 million years managed to survive long enough to have children despite bad food, bad water, predators, cold, infection, and teeth that were almost certainly falling apart by middle age. The odds against any single one of them making it are staggering. And yet here you are, sitting somewhere comfortable, reading this, with a dentist's phone number saved in your contacts for whenever you need it. That is not ordinary. That is the end result of an unbroken chain of survivors stretching back further than the human mind can genuinely comprehend. Each one of them broken in some way, each one of them finding a way through anyway. Your ancestors lost their teeth, and then they figured out what to do next, just like they always did, just like you will.